Yes.
Perfect. All right, I'll give a little introduction. Sorry we're starting a little bit late, a couple of technical difficulties, but we should be ready to go. My name is McKenna. I'm an editor with Utah Business. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about how to stop the threat of lawsuits before they start, which sounds like a really beneficial thing to know. We're here with David Gibb. David is the National Sales Director at Legally Mine. David, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, I have just a couple housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. Once it's completed, it will be uploaded to utahbusiness.com for you to watch over and over again or send to your colleagues, whatever you like. It will be uploaded by the end of the day if you would like to rewatch. And I think that's it from me. So without further ado, Dave, you can take it away.
Well, thank you, McKenna. You know, the joys of technology we had to deal with this morning. I'm actually doing this presentation from Mac's place up in Salt Lake City. For those of you who don't know who that is or what that is, it's an executive social club that is a private club for members, and is definitely something you ought to take a look at if you can look it up. But Mac's place, great spot to network and to meet business people here in the state of Utah. Anyway, let's see if we got everything working properly here to make sure we can move on. I think we are good to go. Okay, well, as McKenna said, we're going to be talking about, actually, she touched on eliminating the threat of lawsuits. Understand, we're going to talk today about how you can use the laws of the United States to make sure that lawsuits don't even start from the beginning. And that's what we're going to get into here. But secondly, we're going to talk about what to do to prepare yourself when the inevitability happens of us passing on, and that is to get your estate in order. And number three, look for some ways to save some money on taxes. And anyway, those are our three learning objectives today. We're going to get through those. We're going to have a little bit of fun, and hopefully you guys can learn a bunch of stuff here today. You know, a few years back, we actually had a business owner come to us, and they had a client in their office. And this particular day, when no one was looking, the client pulled out a water bottle, poured water on the floor, and then proceeded to lie in the water. Well, when the receptionist came back in the office and looked, this gal's laying on the floor, writhing in pain, and you can guess what was happening here, right? It was a setup. They were trying to sue this particular business owner for this. Well, the interesting thing is when this particular business owner got sued, the suit amount was for $7,200. Now that's kind of an interesting number, $7,200. And he found out exactly why it was $7,200 as he went out and started to try to hire an attorney to represent him. He found out that the average retainer to get an attorney in that area of the country was, you guessed it, $7,200. And so he could either spend $7,200 and start the fight and get going with this attorney, or he could spend $7,200 and just settle this thing and make it go away. And you can guess what he did. He went ahead and settled. And I mean, that's really a no-brainer situation to settle in something like that. But why do we settle? You know, and for those of you that haven't been mixed up with a lawsuit yet, there's an incredible amount of time that goes into if you decide you want to take on a lawsuit and fight the situation. Number one, that's time. Number two, cost. The cost, it can get expensive as you start getting attorneys involved and so forth. And number three, the emotional strain that goes along with this. And so you've got to decide at what point, what is your number? What is it worth it for you to go through that headache and that expense and that time and all those different things that are going to be involved in doing this? And you've got to decide when it's worth doing that and when it's just worth just settling and moving on. Well, I found out what my number was the hard way a few years back. I had a manufacturing company here in Utah. We've been in business for about 10 years at the time, and we've grown to 45 distributors nationwide who are representing our products and services. We were a high-end a conservatory sunroom company that manufactured the materials, and then we'd ship them out to distributors. But anyway, we had the situation where we had, and our business was growing, it was going nicely. We had a local contractor come into our office one day and said, "Hey, I'd like to represent you here in the state of Utah." Now, we were growing to the point at this juncture that we decided, you know what, that might be a good idea. rather than offer it directly factory direct here in Utah, let's go ahead and open this up to somebody else here. Well, we signed all the contracts, got this guy signed up. About 30 days later, he brought us our first project. The project was a $45,000 material cost project. He turned around and sold that to the end customer for about $150,000. And that was a fair price for all the work he was going to be doing. So anyway, we went ahead and manufactured the product, gave it to him. He delivered to the job site. He paid us our $45,000. We thought, great, we've got a new distributor here in the state of Utah. This is going to be fantastic. Well, about 6 weeks later, I got dropped with a lawsuit. What happened was this particular distributor took all the materials that we gave him to the job site and collected the entire $150,000 from the homeowner, and then quickly skipped town. Well, this homeowner is looking around for someone to sue, and obviously that we were on some of the paperwork, so they named my company. And I went to my attorney. I said, "How are we even mixed up in this thing? I produced the materials. I did exactly what I wanted to do." And he said, "This is just where we're at." But he said, "I think I can make this go away for about $20,000." Well, I took a step back there and I said, "Well, wait, hold on. Why would I be on the hook for $20,000? What did I do wrong here? I didn't do anything wrong." He said, "That's just what it is, and I can make it go away." And I said, "There's no way a judge is ever going to find me guilty of this. I'm going to go ahead and fight this thing." Well, I was naive in this because I got to tell you, for the next 8 months after that, I went through pure hell. It was every day I had to wake up worrying, am I going to have to file a response to a complaint and so forth as the attorney and this homeowner were sending things over all the time that I had to respond to. And I got to tell you, it was pretty nerve-wracking because I didn't realize this when I took this on, but not only were they suing my company, they were suing me as well. They had pierced the corporate veil, and now we're coming after all my personal assets in this case, which means my home, my real estate, my checking accounts, investment accounts, all these things were on the table. And you just never know how these lawsuits are going to go. So when it's in a court situation, so I was very concerned about this. Well, after 8 months, I won. Now, I put it in quotation marks because guess what my attorney's fees were to get this win? It was $40,000. So I could have spent half the money that it cost me to go 8 months of doing this and eliminated all that stress and headache if I would have just settled for 20 grand 8 months before. And I learned an important lesson, but I got to tell you, I was really soured on our system. Our system here in the United States for dealing with these lawsuits, it felt pretty broken to me. And to be honest with you, I was pretty upset about this and really worried about all my other distributors out there. And could this happen in any of these cases? And I came to the realization that, yeah, this could definitely happen. And so I decided to sell that business. And I got out of that in about 2008. But I knew I'm an entrepreneur, and I knew I would move on and look for different ways to build business and so forth. And so so I decided I better make sure that this never happens again. And I went out and hired attorneys, paralegals. I went out and got estate planning attorneys and some different people to work together. But it cost me about $25,000 to set that structure up. Now, that was about 13, 14 years ago. Things have gone up since then, but I think you can pretty much figure something out about that range. Now, I'll tell you what, I never look back from setting that up. I'm grateful for it. It's actually saved me in a couple of situations. I'm not going to go into details, but I've got kids that drive, and I helped them get into their cars, and guess what? I got named in a couple of things, and it went away because of what I did. So I was grateful to do it. But let's really talk about lawsuits, and are we litigious as Americans here? You know, as I go around the country, and I'm sure you do as well, anywhere you go, in any state, in any city, you're going to find these signs everywhere. You know, Dan got us $600,000. What's your case worth? And all these different ways of people coming after different businesses out there. Well, I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw this stat. The United States makes up 5% of the world's population. Think in your mind of what percentage of lawsuits worldwide you think from that small U.S. population. You know, I'll ask this question in a live setting, and I'll get people telling me 80, 90%. It's always on the high end. I had a doctor the other day down in Florida tell me 100%, which we all had a good laugh about because that's impossible, but unfortunately, it's pretty close. 90% of all lawsuits worldwide come from that small U.S. population. As a matter of fact, over 100 million lawsuits were filed last year alone here in the United States. So the question is, well, why are there so many lawsuits? Well, we saw this poll in the USA Today that said, how are you going to get rich? Number one answer was, I'm going to inherit. So for those of you that have kids, guess what? They're waiting for you to pass on so they come up to your assets. Number two way I'm going to get rich here in the United States is I'm going to win the lottery. I think that's pretty interesting, pretty telling of how people think about how they're going to earn money here. And lastly, the third answer was, I'm going to sue somebody. I think it's pretty interesting, the top three answers. It's not, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get a great education, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to make it on my own. No, that's not how we're programmed anymore, is it? We're programmed to look for those who have made it and take it from them. And guys, that's you. Because as business owners, you are the most sued group in the United States. You have a huge target on your back. And they look at you as somebody who has success. Because you have properties, because you have business, because you have assets, you are a huge target. And how easy is it to sue a business owner? You look at these top three answers, and none of them said I want to work hard, right? They all want the easy way out. And it's a real entitlement here in the United States. We actually had a gal at our office who sold her home to her next door neighbor a few years back. The day she sold the home, she got a down payment of $65,000. The day she sold the home and closed on it, she was sued by her neighbor for $65,000. And it was over a contract thing, and she just like, I don't know what's going on. She wanted to go talk to the neighbor, but her attorney said, don't do that. It's going to mess things up. So she didn't talk to him. Well, they got in a mediation situation, and they were sitting across the table from one another, and this gal at our office said, I couldn't hold back, and I looked at him across the table, and I said, why are you doing this to me? And this was his answer. Because you have more than I do, and I need it more than you do. That's what people think about us, right? It's way easier to take money from somebody else than to go earn it yourself. And this is the type of attitude that we have here in the United States. Well, so why don't we fix it? Well, guys, unfortunately, our nation is run by attorneys. 70 to 90% of elected officials in Congress are attorneys. And if you write the laws and you judge the laws and your profession will benefit from those laws, how are you most likely going to write the laws? And this is the reason why. You're going to do it to benefit yourself, right? This is the reason why there's no ramifications for suing. You can sue anybody anytime. There's nothing they can do about that. There's more suits every year. Increased your odds of losing have gone up. As a matter of fact, 7 out of 10 lawsuits award a settlement of $75,000 plus. And as business owners, you have a 50% chance of being sued. So if you have a 50% chance of being sued, and there's a 70% chance you're going to owe $75,000, well, guys, I don't like those odds. Those odds are stacked against you. But I can tell you what, there are ways to beat it. You can do that through the things we're going to be talking about here today. We're going to be talking about 5 different strategies that are going to utilize uniquely structured entities. All of this is going to be Supreme Court backed, and there's going to be some massive tax advantages that you can take advantage of at the end of the day with this. So let's talk about how does it work. Well, when a lawsuit's filed, there's cause and there's motivation. You can't control the cause of a lawsuit here in the United States. Anyone can sue you at any time for any amount of money, and there's nothing you can do to prevent the cause of a lawsuit. You can't control that. But what you can control and what you must control is the motivation in these cases, in the lawsuit. And guess what that motivation is, folks? Well, the motivation is obviously money, right? Money's the motivator, and so we're going to look for a way to make sure that we can take away that motivation. But let me quickly step out real quickly, and I'm going to put this screen up because a lot of you might have come in late or didn't have time to download the digital handout of today's lecture. But at this point, I'm going to actually start going through these different strategies. And while I tell you this next story about motivation and what happened, feel free to go ahead and download that digital handout so you can follow along. Anyway, our attorneys went and were training different attorneys on continuing education. This was here in Utah. They were meeting with a big group of attorneys, and the meeting right before us was was another attorney teaching all these attorneys the best way to sue a business. And this was the example he gave. There was a business owner here in Utah, actually. And they had a customer there. Her name was Carol. Well, one day Carol was walking out the door to leave the office. The receptionist said, "Hey, Carol, you forgot your reminder notice." Carol turned around to walk back in to go get the notice, and the heavy door hit her in the back, knocked her to the floor, and she hit her head on the ground, and she lost her ability for taste and smell. Well, she went to a lot of therapy to try to get this fixed. It cost her about $60,000 in therapy and so forth, and she was never able to retain that again. And so she went to an attorney to try to recoup her costs. Well, as she went and did this, she found out that the attorney said, "Carol, I think you're being a little bit premature here. Let's take a step back here and look at what we're doing here, because this particular business owner doesn't have any asset protection set in place. He's got a home, he's got checking accounts, investment accounts. He's got a lot of money. We can get more than $60,000." So they filed a full lawsuit against this particular business owner. This attorney was really smart. They went to court, before court, they went and tried to find the jury. And what they did is they did some research on who would be most empathetic to the loss of taste and smell. And what this attorney found is that the group that would be most empathetic was overweight, middle-aged guys. So guess who was on that jury? Overweight, middle-aged guys. Now, did it work? Well, in court, the last closing arguments, the attorney stood up and said, "I want all the members of the jury to close your eyes. Imagine yourself in your youth as you come down on a Saturday morning into to a breakfast. Mom's in there cooking bacon and pancakes and eggs, and we've got fresh maple syrup in there. And all these experiences are that you had as a youth. Well, guess what? You're never going to experience that again. Carol's never going to experience that again. It's because of that business owner," and he pointed to the business owner. Well, again, did it work? Yeah, it did. The jury found him guilty, and the judge levied a $5.14 million judgment against this business owner. How would you feel sitting in that courtroom, looking at that situation and going, "What did I do?" But really, ethically, what did this business owner do wrong? Nothing, right? Did he do anything wrong as far as, did he actually cause the problem? No, he didn't. What he did wrong, though, is he left the motivation on the table. And this is why they didn't just get settled out through insurance and pay that $60,000. They went for more because he had all these things available. And let's talk about some of the motivation that's out there. The first type of motivation here on the screen are called safe assets. A safe asset is not going to cause a lawsuit on its own. This is like your bank account. Your bank account's not going to go out and hurt somebody, but it can definitely. But I got to tell you, if you get sued, these are going to be named. This would be like your cryptocurrency, your cash, your jewelry, anything that's not going to cause a lawsuit on their own is what would be considered safe assets, but they are at risk. So what if I told you to take all these safe assets, put them into a safe, and you'd be the only one that would have the ability to open that safe, and even if they did get it open, only 1% would be on the table. 99% would be protected. Well, that'd be a good situation, right? And that leads us to our first strategy, and it's strategy number one, the family limited partnership. Now, family limited partnerships have been around for years, but they're structured differently than most entities out there. Generally, if you want to have total control of a company, you have to own 51% of that company. With a family limited partnership, it was different. As the general partner, you only had to own 1% to have total control of the company, and you also had 100% liability out of that 1%. The limited partners took 99%, and they had no control and no liability attached to it. And this is what asset protection attorneys were looking at and saying, this could be a really good situation. Let me explain why this worked. My wife and I create a management company to be the general partner. My wife and I own that management company 50-50. We have equal ownership in this, and we gave that management company 1% ownership as our general partner, which means it had total control and 100% liability. Then my wife and I took the other 99%, split that up equally for a total of 100% ownership. Now, if I take all those safe assets we just talked about and I put them into a family limited partnership and I get sued, what percentage can be named in that lawsuit? Well, 1%. Unless my name's Bill Gates, who wants 1% of my assets? Think about what 1% of your assets is worth. Is it really worth coming after? In most cases, it's not, just because it's just not enough money. And we talked about in the beginning, controlling the motivation, controlling the money. This is how you do this with your safe assets. It's just not worth coming after. Well, you have other type of assets, and these are your high-risk type assets. And you can't lump these all into one entity like you can safe assets, because these type of assets can create lawsuits on their own. This would be like your office or your boats or your rental properties or your cars. And by the way, a car is a rolling lawsuit waiting to happen. You can go hit somebody, hurt somebody. Your kids can do this. That's how I found out, is they can go out and hit somebody, hurt somebody. You can get sued for this based upon them driving a car that you had some connection to. So anyway, these are your high-risk assets. You can't lump those all into one entity like you can the safe assets. So that leads us to our strategy number 2, and that is divide these up into individual entities for each asset. This would be like take your home, your boats, your equipment, your office, your rental properties, put them into their own entities so they're separated out. And this is where I see a lot of mistakes by especially real estate investors out there. They'll take 3 different properties, put those all into one LLC and think they're protected. Well, you're not, because if something happens to one of them, yeah, you're going to lose some value with that one. But because those other 2 are inside of that entity, they're going to be named as well, and you're going to lose those in that particular situation. What you need to do is separate those out. Take each one of those different assets and put them into their own entities. So if something happens to one of them, yeah, you're going to lose some value there, but these other 2 are protected. Because in the United States, you can't name an outside entity if it didn't cause the lawsuit, if it wasn't involved in the lawsuit in the first place. And you do this by putting them in their own separate entities. Now, what companies use these strategies? First one I'm going to talk about is Disney. Disney's a multi-billion-dollar company, and anytime that you go to Disneyland, or Disney World, or any of the Disney properties around the world, they're letting millions of people go through those gates every day. As they go through those gates, it seems like you've got all those people in there going on these different rides and so forth. There seems like a lot of little liability there, right? And what do you have to do to get into Disneyland? Do you have to fill out a bunch of paperwork for liability and so forth? No, you just simply buy a ticket. Well, why can Disney get away with this? Well, we actually heard of a case down there where a family took their elderly grandmother on the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. That's what it is. And for those of you that have never been to Disneyland or don't know what I'm talking about, it's a roller coaster is what this is. Well, right on the roller coaster, there's a sign right before you get on that says, if you're pregnant, if you're elderly, if you've got back problems, heart problems, don't get on this ride because it's going to cause problems. Well, they threw Grandma right on the ride and took off, and she had a heart attack. Well, the family were trying to sue Disney because of this, and Disney said, okay, let's take a look at the tape. And when they looked at it, they found that they said, well, it looks like there's Grandma, and she's getting on the 3rd car there. The 3rd car on that particular train is called Goofy Car Number 3 LLC. So Grandma got on Goofy Car Number 3 LLC, took off, had the heart attack on Goofy Car Number 3 LLC. They said, folks, this lawsuit isn't with Disney. This is with Goofy Car Number 3 LLC. And guys, does Goofy Car Number 3 LLC make any money? No. And you can't take the real property if it's inside an entity. You can only take the money made by it. There's nothing to gain here. So what happened to that lawsuit? It went away. There's nothing to get there, so there's no lawsuit. We actually had a doctor that we do business with get sideswiped in a Walmart parking lot and decided to sue Walmart. Well, when they started digging, they found the Walmart store was in one LLC and the Walmart parking lot was in another LLC. And how can you sue a parking lot? Guys, you can't take the real property. The parking lot makes no money. There's nothing to gain there. Guess what happened to the lawsuit? They dropped it. Well, this is going on out there, and this is what these big companies use. Why aren't all of us? And a lot of people will tell me, well, Disney and Walmart have millions of dollars to spend on asset protection, and that's right, they do. But guess what? They use the strategies we're talking about, because the bottom line is, if you can set yourself up in these for safe assets and high-risk assets the way we talked about, there's nothing to gain, so there won't be a lawsuit. This is how you take away motivation, and it actually gets better than that. But that's the beginning of asset protection, is take away the motivation from the lawsuit by using these structures. Well, attorneys out there were looking for different ways to get around and through this asset protection because they could see this was going to be a problem. One way they do it is by piercing of the corporate veil. This is what they did in my case that I explained in the beginning here. My company was sued, but also the judge looked at this and said, well, yeah, your home is technically outside of this, but they're naming you personally. And so, and by the way, I had no asset protection set up. So now they could come directly over and name my home and all my personal assets as well by piercing of the corporate veil. But the big problem on top of this is in most states, a judge can dissolve an entity at will. If I would have had that property, my home, for example, in an LLC, just like we've been talking about, the judge could have looked at it and said, well, yeah, it's in an LLC, but it's really your home, and so I'm going to make that part of the lawsuit. You can do that in most states. So if that's the case, and you live in one of those states that's a problem, and Utah, by the way, is one of those states, they can dissolve an entity at will. The asset protection that we talked about is not going to work for you. And so that leads us to strategy number 3, and that is the Alaskan holding company. Now, the Alaskan holding company, not only is it the last frontier, way outside of the United States and tough to get to and so forth, but which creates some asset protection by itself, but one of the biggest reasons why an Alaskan holding company is so powerful is Alaskan holding companies do not rubber stamp entities. If you bring a new entity into Utah, for example, they can give me out with an EIN number immediately that same day. They don't read over the language of what's in that document. Alaska takes a couple of months to go through this stuff. They read every document. They don't just stamp it unless they approve of it. So what happens, and that leads me to the next point here, in Alaska, you cannot dissolve an entity at will, and that's by law up there. Judge can't do that. So, and because they don't rubber stamp your documents, when it gets into a court situation, and let me explain here. If you have property that's located in Utah, but it's registered in the state of Alaska, the judge in Utah has to use Alaskan law. Has to use Alaskan law. Can't use Utah law. And by law in Alaska, a judge cannot dissolve that entity, and they won't do it. They won't break it based upon the documents that are there if it's written property. And this is why Alaska is so vital for your asset protection. Have all your assets into these FLPs and LLCs, but make sure they are registered in Alaska, and that's because that's where you're going to get your real protection at. Now, that was a great setup. The trial attorneys were always looking for ways to get around that because that was pretty solid. But what they did is they found something called the charging order. They actually passed a law in all 50 states called the charging order. And what this did is it gave the judge the right to force a pro-rata distribution. Now, in the early days when somebody got sued, they would come in and take the business from you and give that business to the plaintiff. Well, guess what happens to most businesses when you take the business owner out of it? It goes out of business because you're the reason why it's working and growing and so forth. And so nobody benefited from that. So what started happening is they started using this pro-rata distribution language that is in documents here in the United States. And let me explain why this was a problem. Let's go back to my case with Carol that I told you about that lost her ability for taste and smell. Well, she won a $5.14 million judgment against this business owner. The first $1 million was paid through his general liability policy. The second $1 million, he had an umbrella policy for another $1 million, but he still owed her $3.14 million. So the judge pierced the corporate veil, as we talked about, liquidated all of his personal assets, his home, his real estate, his checking accounts, investment accounts, and at the end of the day, still owed another $1 million plus to Carol. Well, the judge said, I'm not going to give the business to Carol, so what we're going to do is we're going to, Mr. Business Owner, we're going to give you a salary of $50,000 a year, and anything else that comes on top of that is going to come out as a distribution, and I'm going to force you to give a pro-rata distribution to Carol of every dollar that comes out over $50,000 until you pay her in full. Guys, do you see how would that affect you right now? If the judge told you can make 50 grand, that's it. Anything else you do to build this business, if you want to be inventive, if you want to work really hard and build that business, you don't get any more money from it until you pay her off in full. It's a bad situation for this doctor, horrible, and this particular doctor business owner that we were doing business with. But I got to tell you, it's the reality of what we face here. And so that leads us to the next strategy, and it's strategy number 4, the non-prorated distribution clause. This is extremely important to keep them from coming after your cash. Your assets are protected, But now we can do this through a non-prorated distribution clause because it stipulates that only the general partner can order a distribution. Now, if you're the general partner of your LLC or your family limited partnership or whatever it is, and you get sued, and the judge says, okay, it's your time to distribute, you're not going to do it. Heck no, you're not going to do it, right? And this is the way you block it out of there. Now, understand, if you go create an entity from your local attorney here in Utah, or you use LegalZoom or something like that, they don't use the language we're talking about, because you have to understand that's not rubber stamp, but it's boilerplate software that is actually it's actually templated software. And guess who writes that templated software? The trial attorneys do. And are they going to write it to benefit you or to benefit them? You know, we reviewed over 3,000 documents last year alone from business owners all around this country. Not one of them were written correctly. Every one of them had the prorated distribution clause, which would have allowed the judge to force distribution in these cases. But if you can get it set up properly, I'm telling you folks, this is unstoppable and unbreakable. Now, the reason why I can say that is because this actually went to court. A lot of people were putting their different clients into these different asset protection strategies, and they were being sued, quite frankly, and at the lower court levels, they were losing because the judges had never seen this before. This was back in the early 70s. But this was being appealed to the federal level, and in 1972, in the Ninth Circuit Court, the judge ruled against the family limited partnership, specifically the general partner, and said the general partner should have more liability than 1%, and he ordered all the assets out, made it all part of the lawsuit. Well, this was a great thing for asset protection because it was appealed to the Supreme Court. And in 1974, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in favor of the family limited partnership and the general partner specifically, which cemented it as an unbelievable asset protection tool. And since 1974, we have never seen one of these things broken as long as they were put into place before the lawsuit was filed. Now, if you're in the middle of a lawsuit right now, you can't run out and put all of your assets into these different entities. That's a fraudulent conveyance. You get in trouble for that. But if you can get it set up before it's done, it hasn't been broken in over 40 years. Pretty amazing, rock solid strategies to keep yourself protected. Now, one of the great things about this non-prorated distribution clause that came unexpectedly is that understand, if somebody sues somebody and they don't pay because they have a non-prorated distribution clause, that creates a problem. And usually I use an example here. Let's say we've got Julie who sues John for $1 million. Okay, John's got all of his assets in a family limited partnership. He's got all of his high risk assets in those LLCs. He's got a non-pro-rata distribution clause, and he has his properties registered in the state of Alaska as well. Now, I'm the judge in the case, and I've ruled against her, and I say, look, you owe him the money, but it's up to you whether you're going to pay that money because of your non-pro-rata distribution clause. So the question is she going to pay that? Heck no, she's not going to pay that. So how do you think that makes him feel? John spent all this time, effort, money putting this case together, and he actually won the case, but he's not going to get anything from it. Well, he's not happy about it. But you know who else wasn't happy about it? Most people say attorneys, and you're right, they were not happy about it. But bigger than that, the IRS was not happy about this. Because if Julie would have given John $1 million, he would have to pay income tax on that money. And because now he's never going to get that money from her because she's never going to distribute it, he's not going to pay taxes on it. The IRS didn't like losing out on that. And this is where the unexpected advantage came, which was a huge deal because the IRS came up with IRS ruling 77-137, which states, now listen closely, this is important. A plaintiff using the charging order will have to pay income tax on any monetary judgment, even if there is no distribution from the defendant. Guys, let that sink in a little bit. You see what happened there? John sues Julie for $1 million. Is Julie going to pay? No. Guess who knocks on John's door next? The IRS looking for about $350,000 of money he'll never get. Folks, we call this the revenge clause, and there is not one attorney in this country who will touch a properly drafted family limited partnership or LLC, because if they do and their client wins their case, they're not going to get any money, and they're going to owe taxes on money they won't get. Guys, you know, in the beginning we talked about controlling motivation in these cases. Talk about controlling motivation. What's the purpose of suing Julie? There's nothing to gain in this situation. And the bottom line is, if there's nothing to gain, there's no reason to follow through with the lawsuit. This is why this type of structure works and has worked for over 40 years. And again, you've got to get it set up before the lawsuit's filed. There's a ton of different law firms out there. They got to be specialized in what we're talking about here. But there are lawsuits out there, or law firms out there here in the state of Utah that can help you with that, and all around the country, to be honest with you. But you got to know got to get someone that knows what they're doing. So now you've got all of your assets put into these different entities and so forth. You've protected yourself while you're alive. But what happens when you die? You know, most people I talk to say, well, all my assets are going to go to my spouse or to my children. Guys, don't be naive in believing that that's what actually happens every time. And so that leads us to our next strategy. And it's strategy number 5, the estate planning document called the living trust. Now, living trusts are going to protect everything after you die. They're considered revocable entities during life, so they're not going to protect your assets while you're alive. But once you die, they become irrevocable, and they will protect you against after you die. The biggest thing that we find with these living trusts is they're not disputable, because once you pass away, everything is locked into place, and a judge is not going to be able to change that. I think that's one of the biggest tragedies we have here in the United States. Somebody works their whole life building an estate. They make good money. They have good assets and so forth. They designate this in a will to go to their spouse or their children, and all of a sudden a couple of kids start arguing over some money. They take it to court, and the judge says, you know what? I'm not going to leave it the way the guy who earned all this. I'm going to pass this and divide it up differently than what he'd asked for. And you're not there to dispute it, by the way. You're not there to fight it. And so it just gets changed. And again, that's a horrible thing. Well, with a living trust, once you die, it is undisputable, and it will stay, and your assets will go exactly where you designated it to go to. But the beautiful thing is, because it's changeable before you die, you can change this up until the day you die. Anything in there where you want to go and so forth. But once you pass on, it's not disputable. And lastly, it's going to help you avoid probate. Well, probate is a court, and that's what a living trust will do. Probate's a court. And according to the state, you're still alive. So you don't have to go through probate. And if you have a will and you don't have a living trust attached to it, you're guaranteed to go through probate. Probate's going to cost you a bunch of money, time, effort, money, and so forth. It's just a hassle that you don't need to get involved with. But the biggest thing we find with probate is it becomes public record. All of your assets now are for everybody to see. They can take a look and see what you own and who you gave it to. And if you have a target on your back, guess where the target just shifted to? To the people you love the most. And this is the biggest problem with going through probate. You can avoid that with a living trust. Now, living trust is an expensive document. Here in Utah, you're going to spend about $5,000 to $10,000 to put one of these things together. But it's something that all of us need before we pass on. The problem is we just don't know when that's going to happen. So you have to make this part of your asset protection strategy. And again, there's a lot of attorneys out here who work with you. Go outside your door, you'll find somebody, but make sure they know what they're doing as far as revocable versus irrevocable and so forth. Okay, well, talk about taxes here. You know, the current administration that we have in office in Washington right now is telling us that they're going to enact some of the biggest tax increases in history. And we can sit back and let those happen and just pay the tax, or we can do something about it. Now, you know, what's interesting is the IRS comes out every year and they come out with this nice little statement to let everybody know, hey, it's your responsibility to ensure that you don't overpay on your taxes. And that's saying that the IRS is not responsible. It's saying that your CPA is not responsible. You are responsible for making sure you don't overpay on your taxes. So you've got to go out there and find a way to make sure you can legally reduce taxes. Now, I don't mind paying taxes, my fair share, but I don't want to pay a tip. And so let's take a look and see if there's a way we can figure out how to reduce some taxes. You can do this through all of these different entities that we've structured, through FLPs, LLCs, holding companies, living trusts, and so forth. There's some ways to save money on taxes. Now, you can't take this to your local CPA. They don't understand this. Most CPAs are just tax preparers. They're just trying to get through as many returns as they possibly can. It's against their best interest to try to find deductions for you because it's going to cost them more money. What you need to do and get on your team is a tax strategist. Now, tax strategists are expensive. So you're going to spend about $5,000 to get a good one to work with you on it. But don't be short-sighted on this. If they cost you $5,000 but they save you $20,000 in taxes, was it worth using them? Well, of course they are. And so you definitely need to get someone who knows what they're talking about, especially when you start getting these different technical things that you can do with tax strategies with all these entities. Now, let's go through some tax strategies real quickly. First one I'm going to talk about, and by the way, I can't spend a lot of time on these, but we'll just touch on them. First one is Irs Section 288G, which allows you to rent your home to your business for business meetings. Now, as a business owner, you're supposed to hold at least one meeting every year. The IRS says you can hold as many meetings as you like. You just have to be reasonable with it. And holding one meeting every month is very reasonable. Now, just so you understand, with this IRS Section 288G, you can hold up to 14 meetings a year and not have to claim that as income. So you can find maybe another meeting in July for the 4th of July or throw in another one at Christmas. You can get to 14 meetings. What I'm saying here is don't hold those meetings at your office. Don't hold them at a restaurant. Don't hold them at a hotel. Hold them at your home. And now you can write the expenses off of that business meeting and not have to pay taxes on that income that comes in. I generally, and by the way, just kind of give you an example of how this works. Generally, you can take about 50 cents on the dollar per square foot that you can take in a home. So a 3,000 square foot home is going to give you $1,500 a day. You can rent that home out for business meetings. If you hold 14 meetings that year, that's a $21,000 deduction. And if you've got it depends on your tax bracket, but based on a $21,000 deduction, you're going to save about $8,000 to $10,000 in taxes just by simply doing something that the IRS requires you to do, and that is to have your business meetings. Now, you have to keep minutes of the meetings, and you have to have an S Corp, C Corp, sole proprietorship, or partnership set up and structured, which most of you do on that case. But if you have that put together with the minutes, this is a slam dunk deduction that is simple and easy to take. The next one, income shifting for college students and minors. You can also do this with elderly parents. I've got a daughter, she's 20 years old, going to school. She got some scholarship money, but I had to pull out about $20,000 a year to help her get through school. Well, I can do that post-tax. In order for me to give her 20 grand, I have to earn about $35,000 because I know I'm going to get 15 grand taken off in taxes. So what I've done is I made her a limited partner in my family limited partnership, and now I can shift that money to her pre-tax. I no longer pay taxes on that $20,000. She does, but what's a full-time student going to pay on $20,000? The answer is nothing. She paid nothing on that, and I saved about $15,000 in taxes on that. Amazing tax strategy to take advantage of. And it's anybody you're giving money to, just do it wisely. Make them a limited partner, shift the money to them. Now you don't pay taxes on it, they pay it at their tax bracket. FICA tax reduction using S Corp salary. Now, at a certain level, you don't have to continue to pay FICA taxes and so forth. And so if you can create an S corporation and pay yourself as a W-2 employee and take a reasonable salary, everything else can come out as a distribution. And guess what? On distributions, you don't have to pay FICA tax. You don't have to pay the supplemental tax for Medicare and so forth. And so if you can eliminate those things, somebody making $150,000 a year with this simple little structure, just by creating this little change, can save you between $5,000 and $10,000 in taxes. Captive insurance plans. These are for high-income net earners, that people that don't spend all their money every year but have some money left over. Any money you put into a captive insurance plan gets put in as a premium, and there's no taxes that are paid on that premium that goes into it. You can put up to $2.4 million a year. At the end of it, you can touch it if you need it, but if you pull it out, you're going to pay for your regular tax bracket. But after a year, you can pull that money out, and instead of paying your regular tax bracket, which for most of you is going to be about 30 to 50%, you're going to just pay long-term capital gains, which is around 20%. most of you are going to save 10 to 30% in taxes just by using that one strategy. But again, it's something that's available, and there's people out there that can help you with all these things. But this is what tax strategists get involved with, because they look for the different these different strategies that are available to you. Now, one of the biggest tax benefits that I've seen in years is the R&D tax credit. Now, this is research and development tax credit. This was established back in 1981, primarily used for big pharma. They would use it to develop new products and so forth. Well, in 2015, they wanted to keep this in place because it was a great situation for them. And in the process of negotiating this, they made it permanent, but they also included businesses. Now it opens it up to business owners to take advantage of this. And how exactly do you do a research and development tax credit? Well, if you bring in a new piece of equipment into your office, you bring in a new phone system or a new software system, there's training that has to be done on those things. If you're researching ways to build business, there's training that has to go in, and time goes into that. Well, let's go back to, let's say you put a piece of equipment in, and that training time to put into that. Well, you take all the people that work at your office, you take their hourly rate, including yourself, and times that by the number of hours it took to train them on it. And this can be weeks, months, whatever it is. We can break that down through the ownership manual of this thing of how long it should take to train. Well, any hourly rate times by the number of hours they do this now becomes a tax credit to your business. Now, a tax credit is way different than a deduction. If you have a $20,000 deduction based upon your tax bracket of 30%, let's say, that's going to be a nice $7,000 tax deduction for you. With the tax credit, that $20,000 tax credit, 100% of that $20,000 is taken off of your tax bill. And because this is retroactive, you can go back 3 years to look for anything you've done for research, for development, for training, different things like that. You can take advantage of this and apply it to this year's taxes. We're talking about the taxes you haven't filed yet for 2021. That literally you could do this and retroactive this to last year and take advantage of it in years past. Now, if you've got, the good thing about this is once you get through this process, if you've got some money left over and you owe zero on taxes because you had such a great tax credit, any money that's left over, you can roll that over to future years and take that deduction next year or the year after. This is a really powerful tool. And guys, most of you are not aware of this, at least what we're finding. And again, you're not just going to find this with your local CPA. You got to find someone that knows what they're doing. And that's why tax strategists are so important to get involved with. But it's definitely something you need to take a look at because it's so easy to use. Now, we know what to do, and our screen's kind of being a little funky here, but, we've talked about asset protection. We've talked about tax strategies and estate planning and so forth. And you know what to do. Now let's talk about how to do it. Like I told you, you can go out and you can find different people around the state that can work with you. Back when I did it, it cost me $25,000 to set this up. Estate planning docs are going to be $5,000 to $10,000. LLCs are going to be $2,000 each. Family limited partnerships, $7,000 to $10,000. Holding companies, $2,000 to $3,000 and so forth. You can see this getting expensive, right? But the expense of it is not the problem that I found. It was well worth it for me to spend that money. The problem was how frustrating it was to get all these different attorneys on the same page. Because I've got an estate planning attorney, an asset protection attorney, and a tax strategist. Getting them together was a nightmare for me, and it was a huge headache. And that's what we're going to talk about right now is what Legally Mine can do for you, and what we've agreed to do with the Utah Business Group here. We take everything that we just talked about, we put it underneath one roof. We have in-house asset protection attorneys, in-house estate planning attorneys, in-house tax strategists that will work with you, and you can come into our office anytime, just so you understand. Call our office tomorrow, the next day, whatever. We'll do business with you, and most people you're going to pay a la carte, by the way, on these different strategies, and depending on how many assets you need and so forth, most people are going to spend between $15,000 and $25,000 with this. That's just the norm. But because of our association and our relationship with the Utah Business here, what we've done is we've created something to take advantage of that you can take advantage of because you're part of this group. And what we do is we do an event price of $8,400, and that's everything we talked about here today. Now, let me take this one step further. We're going to give you not only are we going to give you a set price, which will never go up. It's always going to be that cost. It's a one-time fee, by the way, but also we're going to give you our tax savings money back guarantee. This says if we don't save you at least $8,400 in new taxes, we will cut you a check for the difference. So you'll get all of your assets set up. You'll have your structure set up. You'll have your living trust put into place. You'll have your will put into place. You'll have all of these strategies put together, and you will get money back through the IRS, or we will cut your check for the difference. At the end of the day, you will pay nothing for this. Just trying to make this the no-brainer of no-brainers. Now, the reason why we offer these two things, this isn't forever, okay? This is 24 hours that you need to take advantage of this if it's something that you're interested in and that it makes sense to you. And a lot of people will tell me, well, Dave, that's pretty quick to make a decision. Well, understand, you've been thinking about this for a long time. Anytime you see somebody get sued, I guarantee you think, I got to get myself protected. When you see the nightmares of what can happen through estate planning, I know you think about, I got to get my stuff put into place. And then lastly, every time you write that check to the IRS, you're thinking about it. Guys, look at what we're offering here and the discounts and so forth and the guarantees that are put into place. And I think you see that this is a pretty serious offer. This is a quote from one of our clients. Our accountant has been very pleased in the end. We are saving more than twice the cost of the program in tax savings each year. And that's what you have to understand. This is year after year after year that you'll be able to take advantage of this. Now, let's do a quick $8,400 breakdown of what you're getting for this. You pay $6,000 once and never again. This is for unlimited entity creation now and in the future, which means we're going to create your entire asset protection structure, including all of the estate planning docs right now. Anything you need will be put into place. 10 years from now, if you buy a new house, we'll create an LLC for you for free. 5 years from now, you create a new business, we're going to create the LLC for you for free. This is for life. You will never pay for an entity to be created again for you, and it'll have all the proper wording that we've talked about. The other $2,400 is for your first year of Premium Plus service. This Premium Plus service is going to give you a personalized asset protection strategy plan. We're going to do the management of all these entities, which includes minutes, renewals, consulting, and so forth. Registered agent fees are all taken care of. So if we structure an entity in Alaska, you don't pay any more money for that because we will be your registered agent as part of that $2,400 Premium Plus service. We're going to do a tax reduction strategy. You will have access to our staff and attorneys year-round. Anytime you have a question about tax law or about estate planning, you can call our office or asset protection for that matter. Call our office. We'll work with you at no cost. You are basically on retainer here where there's no extra fees that are going to be that you won't have to worry about coming out of it. You've already paid for this through the Premium Plus. And if you come into our office and try to work with our attorneys on a one-on-one basis, they're expensive. It's $5.50 an hour. With Premium Plus, it's free. For our medical professionals out there, HIPAA, OSHA, Medicare compliance is all taken care of, and then we do license protection for malpractice litigation or mitigation and so forth. This is all inclusive what we have, plus the $8,400 tax savings money back guarantee. Again, just trying to make this as simple and easy as possible for everybody to get involved that can see the value of this. Now, I don't know all of our clients, and just so you know, a huge number of our clients are medical professionals. And what you have to understand is the reason why I bring this up is medical professionals are sued even more than business owners. And in 40 years of us doing this, and specifically the last 12 years of us being involved personally, Legally Mind's been around since around 2009, we have not had one of our medical professionals or business owners successfully sued in all that time. That is, and we see lawsuits every day come through our office. And this is the reason why it makes so much sense to get involved, to make sure you have that peace of mind. But this is what Brian Hininciak there, he's the editor-in-chief of the American, of the orthopedics there I believe it's in Florida. What he said is this: as surgeons, we spend a lot of time caring for other people. We often forget to take the time to care for ourselves and other families, and our families. After hearing the presentation, I immediately signed up for the service, and it has exceeded my expectations. While most practicing physicians understand the importance of asset protection, and I would put in business owners there, because these guys they own businesses. So few take the time to act on it until it's too late. Now my assets are protected, my estate is in order, and I have an entity lawyer on retainer for all my corporation's needs. Guys, eventually the odds are against us. Eventually you're going to have to make a decision if you're going to settle a lawsuit or go ahead and fight it. And you will be forced to make that decision if you don't prepare yourself for it. And so I want to say this. Your number should be $8,400. That should be your number where you will never have to deal with this again. Make sure you get your assets set up, your estate planning, tax strategies. And by the way, all of this is tax deductible. Every penny you spend with this. And let me go back to that $2,400 that we talked about as far as the Premium Plus. After 1 year of doing business with us, that Premium Plus is all taken care of. After 1 year, we're going to work our tails off to earn your business, because after 1 year, you have a decision to make. You go ahead and take all these entities that we've created and manage it yourself. And you can do this. It's pretty simple to do, as long as you're organized. Or if we've shown you the value of what we're offering, including all the new deductions and so forth, and we've shown you the value of what we're doing, you can pay us $200 a month, and we will take care of all of everything that we talked about as far as the Premium Plus is concerned, to manage these entities so you'll never have to deal with it again. And most people say, hey, if you're saving me $20,000 a year in taxes, I don't mind giving you $200 a month. But again, the discounts that we're talking about, the $8,400 price tag of a one-time fee with the locked-in price for the Premium Plus service. And by the way, that Premium Plus service will never go up. It started at $30 about 10 years ago. Now it's up to $200 a month. It will never go up for you if you take advantage of this in the time frame that we're talking about. But understand that this is here for you to take advantage of. Like I said, we're going to extend this to you for the next 24 hours. If you're interested, you need to text UB4, that's Utah Business and the number 4, no spaces, to 385-325-7644. Text that over to us. We will immediately set up an appointment with you to get back with you, and we'll talk through your personal situation to see exactly how you should be structured and what exactly you need. Now, we're going to work with you to make sure that it matches what you need so you can take advantage of this. But again, this is for the next 24 hours. The sooner you can get on that so we can start working with you on it, this is how you do that, through texting UB4 to 385-325-7644. Folks, again, my name is David Gibb. I'm the National Sales Director for Legally Mine. We have been doing this, and I think you can see our pricing is very fair, number one. Number two, it's got Supreme Court precedents behind it. And then number three, all of this is guaranteed to come back to you, whether through tax savings or through a check from us. At the end of the day, you'll spend nothing. It's the reason why Legally Mine is the fastest growing, largest asset protection company in the country, is because what we do and how we price this for these different meetings that we go to. We look forward to doing business with you, and hopefully you learned something today. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave. Again, thanks to Legally Mine. And one more time, if you missed it at the top, this webinar will be available online at utahbusiness.com by the end of the day for you to return to on your own time. Thank you guys so much. I hope everybody has a nice day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.